محمد صلى على محمد وآل محمد. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين، خاتم النبيين، سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد، اللهم صل على محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المأسومين المذمومين، ولعنة الله على أعدائهم من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. وصلى الله عليك يا سيدي ويا مولاي يا حجة الله يا ابن الحسن يا صاحب العصر والزمان. My dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, through His infinite mercy, has given us a ni'mah that is the ark of salvation, Abi Abdullah Hussein alayhi salam. And for many years, for those of you perhaps in your 30s, right up until your hundreds, year after year, you've had this opportunity to attend again. And for those of you perhaps attending your first Ashra, be you a young child or perhaps a revert to the faith, you're realizing that this energy that is created at the time of Muharram is something that the world doesn't see with any other individual, no matter how hard it tries. But the question that sometimes arises in our head, or could arise in our head, is that we may get what I call Majalis fatigue. That at some point we're like, why do I need to attend this thing again? The story is still much the same. I still commemorate this person on the 4th night, this person on the 5th night, this person on the 6th night, and so forth. It's the same story, it's the same kind of message. So you know what, maybe, thanks to COVID, I had an excuse to not go one year, and now I can sit at home and I don't need to attend anymore, and maybe those 10 Majalis that I used to break from my entire schedule, I can now say, you know what, I won't need to mess up my schedule that much. I can go for 9 nights, or maybe I can go for 8, or maybe I can go for 3. Maybe I'll just go for the night of the 9th, and the night of Ashura, and then Ashura day I'll do my dues. And maybe as a youngster, at least I remember when I was a little bit younger, I had this thought of like, come on man, it's still my summer holidays. I think in Pakistan you have maybe a few more days, these like precious days of summer holidays, right? As powerful as the pocket money as your parents give you. And why do I want to use these last 2-3 days where all I want to eat is the nice food, but now Dad's saying I can only have non-meat dishes. Like, come on, let me enjoy it. Let me just go to Butler's Cafe and all these different places that we get to visit. Why do I need to be in this majlis? What is it about it? Is it just because my nani ma, my daddy ma, whoever just keeps telling me to come? Or is there something truly founded in the Quran of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that dictates to us something special about holding these gatherings, holding these symbols, holding these rituals, what we call sha'a'ir, these rituals of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Because we're getting challenged, left, right and centre, not just from outside the Shia faith, but now even within those who profess to be Shia, saying 10 nights is a lot, just shorten it to 5. Fatimiyya 5, just shorten it to 1. Soon enough it'll be, just commemorate Ashura day, Fatimiyya, we don't need to worry about that anymore. This religion's getting too sad. So inshallah tonight, what I would like to try and journey on with you is, why do I need to be here? Is there any value? Practically, but also from a spiritual, theoretical standpoint as well. And finally, to see, have we been actually neglecting the power of this alam, of this banner of Imam Hussein alayhi salam that Allah has granted to us as a ni'mah? And inshallah, if you wish to go on this journey together, kindly offer salawat ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. And I assume, given that you're here on the first night, you guys really believe in this ni'mah. And by believing in that ni'mah, I'm sure you believe that Imam Hussein offers a salawat that at least breaks a slight decibel in our voice, in honor of Sayyid al-Shuhada, the one who gave everything so that we can find Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. أفلح من صلى على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Pandemics come and people still stand up for Hussein. Floods in Karachi come, people aren't worried. They're like, we're still going to the Majalis of Hussein. You have to give away your arms or your limbs. We have those in history saying they still come, they still come. What is this value behind this Majlis? And what is the most basic thing that perhaps I can take away even if I learn nothing else? And I'll tell you this, and this isn't a scholarly theory by any means. This is purely an observation. If I were to ask you on the 13th of June 2021, what were you doing? I'd be like, random question, firstly. Secondly, no idea. Maybe you'll check your calendar and like, nothing significant happened, so I really don't remember. So if I was to ask you here on the 13th of June, how spiritual were you? How close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala were you? And a year on, are you any closer? You're like, dude, I can't even remember what day that was. I can't remember what clothes I was wearing. I can't remember the food I ate. I can't remember who I met. You really think I'm going to know my spiritual status back then? But if I were to ask you, Muharram 2021, where were you? You're kind of like, actually, I think I was attending that centre. Or actually, I was on ziyarah that year. Or actually, no, it was the COVID year, so I was still at home and still a bit nervous. And you start to remember what you were doing for those 10 days. And when you start to remember what you're doing for those 10 days, you can remember, oh yeah, after that Majlis, we went to that guy's house and we had a nice little chat together. Or maybe we went to that guy's house and we didn't have the best of chats together. And I remember actually my salah that day, it was not ideal. I wasn't really in the flow of salah. And actually, you know what? I remember I was feeling really guilty in that Muharram because in Shahr Ramadan I didn't really catch all my fasts, so they weren't really that legitimate. Suddenly, you start to have all these memories about those 10 days. So at the very least, the thing that we can take away from Muharram, even if it's nothing else, and like I said, it's not a scholarly observation whatsoever, is that it can be a timestamp for us. Whilst the world is driving by, and whilst you're watching the numbers on your business to see am I growing or not, sometimes you forget to kind of just stop, let all that continue, and think back and go, what was I like a year ago? Truly, what was I like? Have I progressed? Or have I regressed? Have I become more patient? Or have I got more frustrated? Have I got closer to Allah? Or am I now eating things I should no longer be eating? Or indulging in things I should no longer be indulging in? At the very least, my dear brothers and sisters, a message to myself more than anyone. We're told, reflect each night, muraqabah, do it continuously every night. Try and do some hisab of what you've done in that day, but equally do it at a macro level. Look at your growth. When you look at your business, you look at a 6-month forecast maybe, a 12-month, a 3-year, a 5-year, and then you do the max and you see, kind of what trend am I in. Similarly, let Muharram be the way that you can plot. Okay, I remember Muharram 2018, I was nowhere. 2019, I was fine. 2020, COVID, it dropped me. I really lost everything. 2021, I was back in the Majalis of Hussein and I felt myself go. 2022, I'm hoping to reach it. Try and plot that graph for yourself and allow it to, as simply as this, be a timestamp. Now, I hope that's a very simple point, and I hope that's something you take away, put it in the pocket, and then, if you would like, you can now fall asleep for the rest of this brief talk that we have. But if you would like to learn a slightly more scholarly point by Sayyid Muhammad al-Shirazi, I ask you to offer salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. This is a theory that is given and is shared by a lot of different ulama, the general theme behind it. And they come about it from this angle, that this Majlis of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, this Aza of Hussein alayhi salam, is a means by which you can save lives. And I'll repeat it. It's a means by which you can save lives. Now clearly none of us here are ready with like oxygen tanks if I were to fall off, so it's going to be something more than just a physical life. So you can imagine where we're going to go on in this journey. But it's a means to save lives. How? We go to the Quran, and we're going to use 3 different verses from the Holy Quran to illustrate the impact that the Majalis of Hussein alayhi salam and everything that comes with it, the alams, the black cloths, the flags, the tabarruk that you're given, the no-has recited, whatever it is, anything associated with this Majalis of Hussein, anything that you partake in, that you prepare, that you clean up, is something that can contribute to the saving of lives. How? We start with Surah Al-Ma'idah, verse number 32. Well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has this very famous verse that many of us may know, وَمَنْ أَحْيَاهَا فَكَأَنَّمَا أَحْيَاءَ النَّاسِ جَمِيعًا. On the account we ordained for the children of Israel that if anyone slew a person, if anyone kills a person, unless it be for murder or for spreading mischief in the land, it would be as if he murdered all of mankind. And if anyone saved a life, it would be as if he saved the life of all of mankind, or all of the people. So by saving one life, we can save all lives. That's an initial theory we're going to start with. You're like, how does this connect to what I'm saying? We'll get there. But just keep this first point in your head, that if you save one life, it is as if you've saved the life of all the people. Surah Al-Ma'idah, verse 32. Now, when I first heard this ayah when I was younger, the idea comes in that, okay, if I'm ever faced with someone drowning in front of me, get in, make sure they get out, hopefully inshallah. And by that point, the Quran is telling me, I've saved one life, therefore I've saved all of mankind. Okay, maybe that's one understanding, the physical understanding, the explicit understanding, perhaps. The scholars give us a bit more insight, because the Quran is not just trying to give a simple message like that, it's trying to give us more. What does it mean when we save a life, and therefore it's like we've saved the lives of all mankind? What is this saving of a life? To answer that, we go from Surah Al-Ma'idah to the next surah, surah number 6, verse 122. Where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "Can he who is dead, to whom we gave life, and a light whereby he can walk amongst men, be like him who is in the depths of the darkness, from which he never came out? Thus to those without faith, their own deeds seem pleasing." Even more confused. How has this got to do with anything of saving lives? We're going to focus here. In this ayah, we're given an indication about what saving a life could actually be. So let's be clear. It's referring to this point of someone who is leaving and exiting the darkness of aberration towards the light of being guided. Those of you who know Ayatul Kursi, مِنَ الظُّلُمَاتِ إِلَى النُّورِ, from the darkness into the light. Does that mean from the darkness outside into this room? No, it means something a little bit greater. From the darkness, from the veils that exist where you can't see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He will take you from there into the light. Can he who is dead, someone who's dead, to whom we gave life, and a light whereby he can walk amongst men, be like him who is in the depths of the darkness from which he never came out? Can you have an individual who's in the darkness, who feels like the world is against them, who feels that after having multi-millions of pounds in their business, they're still going to sleep frustrated, they're still going to sleep incomplete, even though they've got 2, 4, 6 children, their parents still alive, their siblings still looking after them, the world at their fingertips, they're in their mansion, and they still go to sleep upset or frustrated or missing something. They feel like they're alone, they feel like they're in this darkness. How can such a person go from this dhulumat ila nur, towards this light, towards this nearness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? How can someone go from A to B? Because if you're distant from your iman, you're distant from knowledge. Therefore, the light that is in fact knowledge or faith, as presented in the ayah we just said, is one of these means of giving life. If that person, when they go to sleep that night, somehow come across an article that explains to them how to get closer to Allah, and they enact upon it in their Fajr prayer, and they wake up the next morning feeling like they've got a new hope, they've got a renewed mission, they've got a renewed purpose, they now walk around the earth like a steward of the earth as Allah has made them to be so, and they start to find Allah in everything that they do, and they go to sleep the next night completely satisfied, completely cool. Why? Because they now have Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They've now gone from darkness into light. They've now gone from being dead to having life. They've moved. Now the question would be, what was that article that they read? Tell me, because I'm going to sleep frustrated every night. I'm feeling lonely every night. I'm feeling the world is against me every night. What is the article of this person that you tell us about? What did he read? If I were to give you that article, what would you do with it? Read it. Not just read it, probably photocopy it. Not just photocopy it, probably WhatsApp it to everyone that you know. And like most of us, when we receive forwards, we just kind of hit the message and delete it or block the guy, unfortunately, right, sometimes. If they send too many, it's like a threshold, you know, if too many forwards in a week, you're out, you know, we block you. You get this article, you'll treasure it, you'll hold it close, you'll hold it dear. This was a means by which said person has gone from darkness into light, has gone from being dead into existence, into life. That article becomes holy. It becomes sacred. It is an article that now, because you've given life to one person, it is as if you've given life to all of mankind. Not a physical life, a spiritual life. Now, how does this relate to Imam Hussein alayhi salam? I'm hoping you're starting to see the trend here. Okay, there's an article. I wonder what that article could be. We'll get there. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about these sorts of articles, these sorts of concepts that help individuals go min al-dhulumat ila an-nur. And He talks about it in Surah number 22, verse number 32. And this is the verse that you need to have in your mind. ذَلِكَ وَمَنْ يُعَظِّمْ شَعَائِرَ اللَّهِ فَإِنَّهَا مِنْ تَقْوَى الْقُلُوبِ. And whoever holds in honor of the sha'a'ir, the symbols of Allah, for they truly reflect the piety of the heart. What are these symbols? What are these sha'a'ir of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Would you call this article that has taken this person from darkness into light a symbol of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? I would say yes. It is something that when they read it, they went from having no Allah to finding Allah. That is a symbol of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is a sacred symbol of Allah. And Allah saying, whoever holds in honor these sort of articles, these sort of artifacts, these sorts of concepts, these sorts of gatherings, these sorts of individuals, these sorts of whatever things that take people from the aberration of darkness into light, these are holy. And if you hold on to them, فَإِنَّهَا مِنْ تَقْوَى الْقُلُوبِ, for truly they reflect the piety of the heart. That is where you can find taqwa. So the question comes, okay, these articles sound pretty important. What are they? What are these things that can take not just an individual, but the entirety of mankind مِنَ الظُّلُمَاتِ إِلَى النُّورِ? Because whatever they are, we best protect them. We best keep them treasured. We best keep them more treasured than our wedding jewelry, than our fortunes. Because that doesn't go with us into the next, as we know. But this could help me in the next life. Of course, one of those immaculate, phenomenal, unique symbols that takes one from darkness to light is the ship of salvation of Abi Abdullah Hussein alayhi afdalus salati was salam. Of course. I'm sure you all know, but let me caveat it with I'm sure the majority of you will know. Either of yourself or your spouse or your child or your parents or your friend or a community member of someone you've heard in a story once upon a time. That they were having a miserable time of things. They weren't the best of individuals when it comes to their proximity with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They found it very difficult to avoid the vices of this world. But for some reason, they felt this gravity that would every year take them towards the 10 days of Ashura. And you kind of see them walk in, you're like, oh, I haven't seen you the whole year. And in the back of our heads, we're judging them already. Where are you for the other 300 and whatever days in the year? But they come, and somehow by the end of those 10 days, they boarded a ship that's taken them from darkness into light. That is a sha'a'ir of Allah. That is a symbol of Allah. That thing that they attended gave birth to their spiritual life once again. And that thing must be protected and sanctified with as much wealth, time, health, whatever that we can give it, so it never, ever, ever ends. Let me use a really ridiculous example. We're in Pakistan, so I'm going to go for cricket. Inzamam al-Haq. Haq, the truth, the true Inzamam. We have amazing clips of him falling over his stumps. If we were to hold a vigil, not a vigil, he's not dead yet. If we were to hold a memory, like, of his career of 20 years or whatever in the Pakistani cricket team, what would be the theme of that event? Something to do with cricket, right? Why? Because the man is associated with it. If we were to, for example, hold after he finishes his career, and I'm not going to say whether I like the guy or not, that's not for today, a career highlight of Elon Musk, we'd be thinking about, or be themed about, engineering, Tesla, SpaceX. Why? Because that's kind of what he gave his life to. If we were to hold a vigil, a memory on the career of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, what would it be about? Not about him, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, nothing but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Imam Hussein alayhi salam himself is a sha'a'ir of Allah, is a symbol of Allah. They say things like, I want to get to know Hussein, given his greatness. But if he points me towards Allah, then I want to know about this Allah that he speaks of, right? Because this man was phenomenal. But if you're telling me that he's not the best thing that there is, then tell me about who he thinks the best thing that there is. Tell me about Rabbul Hussein. Hussein alayhi salam is this sha'a'ir that Allah subhanahu is one of the sha'a'ir that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about. This vigil that we hold for 10 days, or for 40 days, or for every Thursday in our household, or for when someone passes away and you recite Ziyarat Ashura, or for that Ziyarah trip that you go on in Arafah, or that Ziyarah you recite on the day of Arafah, all the days of Qadr, all 15th Sha'ban, Hussein, 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 he keeps repeating. Why? Because through his remembrance, people find Allah, and they go min al-dhulumat ila an-nur. So do I need to come to these majalis? It depends on what your goal is in life, to be honest. It's meant to be about reviving this love and that connection and proximity with Allah. That is the whole goal of this. And it's up to you to decide whether I find that genuinely important or not. You could say, you know what, no, I don't really find that valuable. He's saying these words, and right now I've checked out. My mind is on my crypto dropping. That's where my head is. My mind's on the rupee struggling against the pound and the dollar. That's where my mind is. Maybe. But you've got to answer that question. I've got to answer that question. Does it really excite me when someone says attending the Majlis of Hussein is not just about the niyaz, it's not just about the social, it's not just about the black that I get to wear. Actually, it's completely about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and my journey towards Him. Does that truly excite me? Because if not, maybe we've missed our purpose in life. And we can revisit that tomorrow, inshallah. But let's admit it. Let's admit it to ourselves. Does that really get me out of bed in the morning? Is it me journeying towards Allah that helps me hop out of bed in the morning? Or is it me attending to my business and earning more money full stop that gets me out of bed in the morning? Which is it? One is finite, so it will run out. The other is infinite, and you'll be moving towards the infinite light of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One is a challenge, one is a sha'ar. Answer it honestly. On this first night of Muharram, we mentioned in our very first point, at least treat it like a timestamp. That timestamp doesn't need to be this Muharram versus last Muharram and a yearly thing. Maybe say, you know what, let me plot the graph. Night 1 to night 10. Where am I going spiritually in these 10 nights? If I'm flatlining, maybe these majalis are not having the effect on my soul like they should be. And therefore I need to check what's happening. Or maybe I set myself the goal, you know what, by the end of these 10 months, I want to be here. And my plan to get there is this. Create that plan for yourself. Don't let the 10 nights go. Because all of us here know, and many of us attended a gathering yesterday for a dear member of the community who passed away just a year ago. I'm sure not just him, but many others would have thought, yeah, the next Muharram I'm going to be there, right? Of course. But we know it's our days are numbered. We know it. I don't need to re-emphasize that. So this could be your last 10. This could be your last trampoline to eventually spring towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala fi dunya. Perhaps. So decide tonight, or maybe decide now. Am I going to take these 10 nights like they're my last? Or am I going to take these 10 nights like I'm guaranteed another set? You choose, I choose. We choose for each of ourselves. You know intellectually what the right decision is. And if there's something that's stopping you, admit it to yourself. What is that thing that's stopping me? Admit it to yourself, write it down. Put it forefront on your wall saying, that is the thing that is stopping me from getting to Allah. The fact that I can't drop that ego is the thing that's stopping me from getting to Allah in these 10 nights. Put it on the wall. Get some darts. Chuck it in the wall. Seek permission of your parents first. But admit it to yourself and try and butcher it. Because that's what these 10 nights are about. They're about finding Allah. We forget sometimes that the Imam alayhi salam are known as Da'i Allah, callers unto Allah. Perhaps we could say Imam Hussein alayhi salam couldn't care less if this flag wasn't up, if we were all complete muwahhids. Because that was his mission. He just wanted us to find Allah. He just wanted us to experience the complete tranquility that he felt in finding Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's a means for us, of course. But it's Allah first, and it's Allah only. Hussein is the vehicle. He is the sha'ar. His majalis is the sha'ar. The matam is the sha'ar. And I say this just on a quick parenthesis, and I hadn't planned to say it, but I will say. Unfortunately, again, in our community, not just here, but I'm talking community worldwide, I've seen it in London many times, in many centres. As soon as the Masa'id finishes, everyone's out. Everyone's out. This matam thing is a waste of time. Bit of poetry, whatever, same thing, we heard it every year, I heard it because it's boring. I'm too intellectual for this matam, you know, I'll just leave it. This crying, give it a rest, man. It's just like, just get it, be sad and move on. Kamil ziyarat, and that is all I will say, Kamil ziyarat. Go and pick up that book and see the riwayat about the value of a tear for Hussein alayhi salam. And if you tell me that sitting and listening to beautiful lines of poetry about the musibah of Hussein alayhi salam doesn't bring you one extra tear, then I ask you to listen more deeply. I ask you to listen with your heart. I ask you to listen like Sayyidah Zahra would listen to the lamentations of her dear son. When we walk out of these walls and miss the sha'ar, the matam of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, we are walking away from a symbol that reminds us of a symbol that reminds us of a symbol that takes us to Allah. You choose if you want to do that or not. Or you say, you know what? Maybe that loneliness I'm feeling, maybe that frustration I'm feeling, if I take this matam seriously, if I take this majalis seriously, if I make my line, if I contribute, if I raise my voice and join in with the recitation, maybe it will just shake my heart suddenly. And I'll be able to remove that shackle that's stopping me from reaching Allah. Maybe you already are there, but perhaps your voice, your trembling, your quivering, and the unison of it could help the person next to you who's struggling, and you could be a means for their salvation. To go min al-dhulumat ila an-nur, maybe. Or the ego takes over, I'm too good for this, I'm too intellectual for this, I'm going to leave the room and prioritize something else. Which I'm sure there's important things we can prioritize, but the question would be, really, a better priority than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? It's got to be a good one. Let's be honest with ourselves, with how we're treating this blessed majalis of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. The third point that I'd like to mention, that this Majlis of Imam Hussein alayhi salam allows us to do every year, is to recalibrate. I mentioned earlier that this world is moving faster than it ever did before. One mistake you make or one achievement you make, it's reached the other side of the world within seconds. It's flying past. Years are going quicker like never before. Political parties are coming up and they're diminishing days later. Economies are up and diminishing days later. Countries are free and suddenly another invasion, so on and so on and so on. Ideologies exist and then they no longer exist and a new one comes up. The Majlis of Imam al-Hussein allows us to calibrate, to say, you know what, given that the world is moving, given that everything is moving so fast, I need to be able to know, this new political party, do I side with them or not? Yes, it's helping my bank account, but Hussein wouldn't stand on that side, he'd actually be over there. You have this litmus test. Whether you use in science, the litmus test. In the same way, any situation that you're in now, you can look back on the last year and think, you know what, I've got this group of friends and that group of friends, which one Hussein is picking? Do it in every single thing in your life. Where would a Hussein be in that decision? Since last year, where would a Hussein be in these decisions? Am I choosing a Yazidi path or am I choosing a Husseini path? Am I choosing a path that is of lower desires or am I choosing a path that is to infinite greatness? Which side am I choosing? And evaluate, write it down. Take it as seriously as you would anything else. And this extends to religious movements as well. And this is a critical point. Alhamdulillah, we have many people in our community with the best of intentions, trying to seek the perfect path, trying to find Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But in doing so, sometimes they can make an incorrect conclusion on something. They can say what was initially required is now no longer required, or what was initially haram is now actually halal, so on and so forth. And maybe they're doing it with the best of efforts, with the best of intentions, with the best of understanding, but we need to remember one thing, that one person's 10 years, 20 years, 60 years, 80 years, 100 years worth of research could be extremely noble, but it could be wrong. So we need to take a step back when we hear these new ideas. Go, okay, new idea, I'm not just going to run away from it. No, this faith has answers. I'm not going to run away from it. But what I will do is ask for this individual to analyze the 1400 years worth of scholarship that has a complete answer on this topic and tell me where that one has gone wrong. Show me the evidence before I jump to this new idea that I think is correct. Because as far as I'm concerned, Hussein stood with this 1400 years worth of scholarship in the mainstream Shia school of thought. So if this new idea comes in, no problem. But please, can you discredit the existing one first with a valid line of arguments? And then show me your line of arguments? And then I'll ask these individuals to then criticize that. Don't just jump to the things that look easier. This path to Allah, it's not meant to be like super straightforward. It's meant to be tough. Shaitan is ready to jump at you from behind, from the side, from in front, and all sorts. So use this majlis as an opportunity to say, you know what? I wasn't doing that last year, and now I am because I was told it's okay. Let me add Hussein to the litmus test, and let me just take a step back. Where is he going to be? Is he on the side of that, or is he not on the side of that? These new versions of spirituality that are coming out saying, God is loving, God is merciful, God is forgiving. Yeah, that's all correct. But they've neglected that God is great. They've neglected that God has justice. They've neglected adala as our second usul. So suddenly we're free to do whatever we want. We can treat Allah as a friend. Hey Allah, listen up, right? Thank you for giving me all this stuff. You're great. I'm going to come to you when I need you. But for the rest of my life, you follow what I'm going to tell you. No, Sadiq, actually I've written this book and sent 14 guides, the Ma'asumeen. Follow what they're suggesting actually. No. I know better. I'm an intellectual Western individual is what we hear in the West. I'm sure it's similar here in the East. No, what's happening to us? We start our prayer with Allahu Akbar. Greater, greater than greatest. The translation is difficult. Beyond. When you stand in front of something great, you humble yourself. You don't roll your shoulders back with arrogance and say, I'll now plot the path on how I'm going to find you. The spiritual path has been trodden by Imam Hussein alayhi salam. And you can look at it in Dua and Arafah. And inshallah on night 4, if our journey goes as planned, we'll look at some of these lines from Dua and Arafah. And that's where you can learn spirituality, no problem. And whilst Imam Hussein talks about the forgiveness, the loving nature, the mercy of Allah, he doesn't forget to mention Allah's greatness and how sinful and how neglectful we've been. So the point here, we're on a couple of side points. The main point here on this third part is use Hussein alayhi salam and the Majlis of Hussein as a litmus test. in all the decisions that you've made. Be they spiritual decisions, business decisions, affiliations, all of these have spiritual effects. Am I really making Husseini decisions? New movements exist. Does Hussein agree with that one or does he not? Don't try and be creative to find a way to justify what you want. Just be honest and say which side is he on, side with it, and then figure out the rest later. Because you don't want to board the ship that's sinking, you only want to board the ship of salvation. Muhammad sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Inshallah, if I've not lost you and you wish to hear something that truly inspires me about these nights of Muharram, kindly offer salawat ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Sometimes when I actually think about it, I'm like, you know what, maybe we take Imam Hussein alayhi salam for granted. Like seriously, what did I do in this last 365 days or 300 odd days to deserve to be here today? And you know, sometimes you wake up and you're like, wow, I'm so grateful to have this loving family, or this loving spouse, or this loving child that runs into your room. Sometimes waking you up a little bit frustrating, but you know, you're like, wow, what have I done to deserve all these barakah, these blessings, this mercy? When you go to that shrine of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, may Allah grant us that ziyarah soon, inshallah, soon. You get there and you're like, what did I do to deserve to come and see this man? No, what did I even do to deserve to have ma'rifah of this man, to even understand or try to understand this man? No, what did I even do to have a mother that told me about Hussein and would hold my hand when I was a kid to say, come to the Majalis of Hussein? What did I do to deserve this? No, what did I do even in the last day to deserve to be here to commemorate Hussein? What did I do? Because truly he is an individual that takes people min al-dhulumat ila an-nur. For sure. He's probably taken each of us in different aspects of our lives min al-dhulumat ila an-nur. Why am I, out of the 7-8 billion people on this earth, amongst the few, unfortunately the few, that get this opportunity? What have I done? Sayyid Muhammad Shirazi, in his book, The Sacrifice for Mankind, narrates this story that I think just puts into perspective just how powerful these majalis can be. And it shook me when I first read this. And I remember when I was rereading through my notes, I was like, should I include this, should I not? I was like, you know what? This story, even though I first read it maybe, I think it was during university, 2013 or something, 9 years now, I'm like, you know what, this still shakes me when I think about it. He says that one of the other Maraji in the holy city of Qom al-Muqaddasa told him about an interesting account of his encounter with a Christian priest. He was studying in Najaf, and he went to the holy city of Baghdad with some of his fellow students. And they wanted specifically to listen to a Christian priest. Now they were students, they were scholars, so they would usually wear their scholarly garb, but instead they kind of just wore normal clothes so that they can go and sit in the gathering and kind of just absorb the normal rhetoric that was being shared. And at the end of the program, the priest came up to them and asked, who are you guys? And we're native Arabs, we've just come here, wanted to come and listen to you. And the priest said, look, I didn't mean that, but it seems to me that you guys are scholars. And I don't think that you came here to learn from me. So they're like, okay, I study theology, like I'm in the seminary, I'm in the religious seminary. And the priest knew this from the outside, he could tell, there's something about these guys, he could tell. And the priest said to them, look, I'm going to admit to you guys a truth that you'll never hear anyone else say. Okay, sure, go on. He says, look, your prophet was a man of knowledge and reflection and was aware of reality. And in these qualities, he was unparalleled and came second to none. Furthermore, your prophet left behind for you things that no other prophet left for his people. And if we just had one of those things, we would have made the entire world Christian. SubhanAllah. 4 things. And if we just had one of them, we would have made the entire world Christian. What are they? Firstly, the noble Quran. the eternal miracle of Islam. If they had that, it would make the entire world Christian, the priest says. Second, the Sadat, the descendants of the Holy Prophet and his family, because they continue to remind people of the existence of the Prophet. Third, the existence of those shrines of the impeccable Imams. Remember, he's in Baghdad, so he's near the holy shrine of Kaldhamiyya, of Askariyain, just down the road as well. He obviously will know about Najaf and Karbala, and of course he'll probably know about Iraq, but at least he knows about these 4 holy sites and the 6 holy personalities or 7 holy personalities that reside within them. So it says the existence of those shrines and of the impeccable Imams, as well as those of their offspring. Because these shrines, they act as a magnet and a focal point for the people, continually attracting them and giving spiritual strength and guidance. The fourth thing, he said the morning programs. The Majalis of Hussein, established to commemorate those very personalities. These are the best centers for making the people adhere to Islam. The priest goes on, I have difficulty in attracting followers of my own faith. In your case, you put a banner with Ya Hussein and masses of people flock to your assembly. How true is that? That if you were on a business trip in Singapore right now, you'd know that Muharram has arrived. And you'd be searching for a flag somewhere that says Ya Hussein. You don't even know the people. You're just going to go straight in, sit down, and act as if nothing's happened. You're now at home. In a home so far away from home. You just stick up the flag of Hussein and people come flocking. So what have we done to deserve it? What are we doing to continue to deserve it? What are we doing to neglect its true power? In that it can truly take us min al-dhulumat ila an-nur. These majalis are so blessed. And if conducted correctly within the confines of the Sharia, with the guidance of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, it can have the power of giving salvation not just to one human being, but based on that ayah that we said at the beginning, to every single human being in the entirety of humanity, min al-Adam ila al-Khatam, from Adam until the end. And therefore these majalis of Hussein are so sacred. And they have to be observed as such. And they're your opportunity to reach that salvation. But as I said to you, and we end on this before the Messiah, the question is for each of us to go home and answer tonight. Do I really care about reaching that salvation? Do I really care about reaching Allah? If not, then these majalis are critical for you. And if so, then these majalis are critical for you. No matter who you are. These majalis of Hussein alayhi salam are absolutely critical. Why? Because he takes you towards achieving your purpose, your reality in this life. Whether you believe it or not, whether you reject it or not, your purpose is to get as close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as possible. And Hussein is Safinatul Najat, and he is the one of a few that can get you there. أفرح من صلى على محمد وآل محمد. On this first night of Muharram, it is customary to remember the departure of Imam Hussein alayhi salam from Medina al-Munawwara. And for those of you, as I said, who have been on business trips, or maybe you've gone on ziyarah, or maybe you've gone on hajj, and you've left behind family members, it'd be normal, especially if you're going, not maybe for like a couple of days, but perhaps if you're going for a month, 2 months, 3 months, to go and see your family members, to bid them farewell, to have a final dinner with them, to have a final moment with them, and then you'll keep in touch along the way thanks to technology. But back in the day, obviously, it wasn't that easy to keep in touch. And you know, when you pick up your child, maybe they're 2, 3, 4 years old, and you kiss them on the cheek, you're like, hey, I'll see you later, don't worry about it, I'll be back before you know it, I'll bring you some gifts, it'll be fine, your kid's probably crying. Your partner's probably upset that you're going, but they're putting on a straight face. And maybe then there's a loved one that's no longer with you, and you're like, you know what, I usually go and visit the Qabristan every Sunday to go and spend time there and to reflect. I'll just go to the Qabristan and quickly have a moment, pray Surah Al-Fatiha, and then I'll head on my travels. That salam is tough. That final salam is tough. That fi amanillah, that khudafis, that last embrace is tough. And that is tough when you know that you're coming back. But when you know that you're going to be going on a journey where you won't physically return, it can be that much tougher. Sallallahu alayka ya Sayyidi wa ya Sallallahu alayka Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, as night fell, he went to the mosque of the Holy Prophet to bid him farewell at his grave. When he reached the grave of the Holy Prophet, he saw a light emanating from it, so he returned back. On the next night, Hussein went back again to bid farewell at the grave. He stood in prayer for a long time when he was in prostration, and he fell into a light sleep, and the Prophet came to him in a dream. Sallallahu alayhi wa alihi. Al-Amali of As-Sudduq tells us about this dream of Hussein alayhi salam. The Holy Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alihi said to take Al-Hussein and hugged him to his chest. He would kiss him between his eyes and he would say, Bi'abi anta, may my father be sacrificed for you. This is the Holy Prophet saying it to Imam al-Hussein. كأني أراك مرملا بدمك بين إصابة من هذه الأمة. It is as if I see you drenched in your own blood, lying before a group from his own nation. يرجون شفاعتي. They will seek my intercession on the day of judgment. ما لهم عند الله من خلاق. But God will deny them any share of it. But the Holy Prophet's reported to go on, and he's reported to say, Oh my dear son, إِنَّ قَادِمٌ عَلَىٰ أَبِيكَ. You are coming towards your father. وَأُمِّكَ وَأَخِيكَ, your mother and your brother. وَهُمْ مُشْتَاقُونَ إِلَيْكَ, and they wait for you eagerly. Why? What's going to happen? وَإِنَّ لَكَ فِي الْجَنَّةِ دَرَجَاتٍ لَا تَنَالُهَا إِلَّا بِالشَّهَادَةِ. That you have a station in paradise that cannot be attained except through this martyrdom. Hussein alayhi salam would wake up from his sleep in tears. He'd come back to his household. He informed them about the dream, and he then bids them farewell. When Hussein alayhi salam completed 2 years of his life, the Prophet went on a journey, and along the way he stopped and he recited the verse, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. And his eyes suddenly filled with tears. And he was asked about this, and he said, Here is Jibreel informing me about a land at the banks of the Euphrates called Karbala. My son Hussein, the son of Fatima, shall be killed there. Someone asked, who will kill him, Ya Rasulullah? He replied, a man by the name of Yazid, may God curtail his life. It is as if I can see the place where he shall fall and where he shall be buried, and his head shall be carried away as a trophy. By Allah, no one shall gaze at the head of my son Hussein and be pleased, except the one whose tongue God has separated from his heart. Ala la'natullahi ala al-qawm al-zalimin. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون والعاقبة للمتقين. With these tears in our eyes, we pledge this allegiance to Hussein alayhi salam together. And I really want you guys to put your voices together, because honestly, when you hear these voices of the lovers of Hussein come together, it can really melt away some of those vices that we have in our heart. And the value of that tear is phenomenal. And I said I leave you to come to Ziyarat to read about it. So inshallah, with this salutation to Hussein, as if we were in the land of Karbala al-Muqaddasa, we pledge, Ya Hussein, during these 10 days we're going to do our best to come towards you and therefore to get closer to Allah. We're going to do our best to remove these vices that are holding us back, that perhaps you look at us and you think, are you really my Shia if you're still holding to those vices? Ya Hussein, for these 10 days we're going to do our best to drop them. So please, with all of your energy, not for my sake but for the sake of Az-Zahra alayhi salam, we send our salutations to Imam al-Hussein. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alayka ya Abdillah wa ala arwahil lati ما شاء الله عليكم مني جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل ولا جعل الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. سيدي ومولاي أبا الفضل العباس باب الحوائج، وأخته زينب الكبرى والمصائب، وبنتك سكينة. السلام عليكم يا شهداء يا نساء ويا أيتام كربلاء جميعا، ورحمة الله وبركاته. ما تنام سيدي.